Hello and welcome to All About Billings. We are a show dedicated to discovering the people who make Billings a great place to work and live. We will interview local business people, community leaders, artists, entertainers, and we will learn from them all about their successes, their challenges, and their connection to Billings. I'm your host, Nancy Brook, broker and owner at Billings Best Real Estate. And today it is my pleasure to have as my guest Clayton Thompson, who is a dog trainer here in Billings with his business, Barks and Recreation. Welcome to the show.
Well, thank you for having me.
Well, I think I told you before the show, I have a personal interest in dogs and dog training because I'm a dog mama of 2 wild rescue dogs.
Of course.
So tell me a little bit more. How did you get started in dog training?
Well, it definitely started as I always knew I wanted to do something with animals, and it's certainly hard to just show up at a place and get hired at a spot where you can work with those animals. So I just decided after a lot of thinking that I just wanted to get involved more myself, and I decided I'll just do it myself, get my own experience, and here we are several years later and several hundred dogs later. And
oh my goodness. So several hundred dogs, but you do more than dog training, right? Weren't you doing some staying with dogs as well?
Yes, that was kind of how I got my start, was
Okay.
just simple pet sitting, dog walking, and things like that. And it was one of those things, I never intended this to be my lifetime career, but more and more dogs showed up, and I decided I loved it more and more, and I needed to expand my knowledge and really learn all about the dogs and best ways to help them. And that's kind of what evolved into Barks and Recreation. That was what I started about a year ago, but I've been working with dogs for about 4 years now. Yep.
So what is it about dogs that catches your interest enough that you want to start a business?
Well, I've always felt that dogs are just such misunderstood creatures. I always tell my clients it's very difficult to be a dog in a human's world, and it always just felt good to just really try and understand where the dogs are coming from, which they don't really get a lot of in the human world, trying to adjust to our way of life and things like that.
So tell me what that means. So you say a dog has to adjust to us. So what can be the disconnect with dogs?
Well, the hard part is the way dogs communicate, the way they interact with each other, process the world, is completely different and almost opposite in the way that a human would. And trying to bridge that gap, when they're just thrust into a situation they don't really understand, it can cause frustration and behavioral problems and all the reactivity and aggression you can see. And it all kind of stems from just a lack of direction. Like they just don't quite know what to do, and they need this guide, this leader, and that's where I've kind of set my goal to try and help the owners to do that.
So what would be an example of a dog does it this way, but humans do it this way?
Well, what I talk about in my sessions all the time is the way a dog processes the world is through the nose first. I mean, and a lot of people, that seems like an obvious thing to say, but when you think about it, they're always processing with that scent first, the nose, then the eyes, then the ears, which when it comes to a human, we're processing everything through the eyes first. I mean, when the dogs are sniffing around, that's information to them. That's them learning about their environment, learning about people and even other animals. Yeah.
Well, I mean, just a simple example when you talk about that comes to mind is when dogs sniff each other's behinds. And I mean,
that's exactly it.
We as humans, I mean, if we did that, they maybe call the police if I started sniffing somebody's behind.
Only a dog could get away with that.
So that's kind of a very obvious example. And you know what else is interesting? So I'm in real estate, and sometimes I'll go to people's houses and they have pets. And the pet might say hello and, rub up against me. And my dogs, I come in the house and they're like all over me, wondering, what that smell is. So
yeah, and especially when you've been to some place where yeah, they aren't familiar with, where they've never been, and you come back, and especially my own dogs, myself, I work with maybe 5 or 6 animals a day that they have never met, and when I come through the door, their noses are immediately going to work.
yeah.
They're, who is that dog? Where were you? That doesn't smell the same. Things like that.
So you said dogs are misunderstood and that can lead to aggression. So tell me how that can escalate. So, you know, what might happen that we're misunderstanding and then the next thing you know, the dog is kind of maybe acting out?
Well, one thing that could be a good example of that is just with Christmas. When it comes to Christmas, there's this tendency for humans to want to bring the dog into the Christmas magic, so to speak, where they want them to be a part of everything. They want them to get presents. They want them, but that is such an informational overload for a dog. That's new smells, new lights, new sounds, new people even, and that amount of stress can really stack up. Where I forget what the statistic was, but there is actually an increase in accidental bites specifically over the Christmas holiday due to things like that. Yeah.
I suppose the other thing is, like, I have grandchildren, and so my dogs aren't around young kids because I don't have young kids in the house, and all of a sudden they're exposed to these little humans. I would imagine that could cause some stress,
Absolutely,
just from being around. They're moving quickly and they're a little unpredictable when they're babies.
Yeah, and that's just the way kids are too, but they're generally louder, they're more chaotic with their movement, and to a dog that can be just very confusing and very overwhelming, and of course that's just the way kids are. You can't help
Sure.
that sort of thing, but to a dog, they don't understand that. They just see this chaotic movement just coming at them and maybe even invading their space a little, just
Sure.
because kids are curious. They see this dog, they've seen all the cartoons.
Maybe want to hug the dog even.
Exactly, which if your dog is not properly prepped and to understand that, that could be seen as threatening to a dog-to-dog interaction, but it's really important to really condition a dog that's, and of course kids too need to be respectful, but that sometimes that can happen. It's important for them to know that.
Well, sometimes when they're really little, it's, if they're 1 or 2, they're not really capable of, I guess, tamping down their natural, I don't know, bumping around and being a little chaotic. And I think that's probably hard if they don't grow up with a
Yeah, and
with
especially
dog.
with real young children too, and with real young dogs, it's so important to do that intervention early, and even coach kids that it's important not to invade the space of a dog, and it needs to be very simplified, of course, so kids can understand that, but space to a dog is just such a huge thing to respect.
So, like an example, so my dogs, they're old. They're going to be 10 in January, and they have not been around young kids very often. So how would one go about preparing a dog? These aren't puppies. I mean, I can't go back 10 years and train them to be around kids. So what do you do if you have a situation like that?
Well, some things I've done in my one-on-one sessions is bring it all back to what we were talking about with how, the dogs process everything through the nose first, where space doesn't even enter into it. The only thing you're using to really get them started with that adjustment is scent. So maybe like a shirt worn by the kid, letting the dog sniff it,
Okay.
Take in that information without that additional social pressure of a loud, rambunctious kid running around. And it's a lot about very slow, careful introductions, respecting space, respecting the dog's frame of mind. I think that's something that's generally lacking in dog training, is there isn't enough consideration in how the dog's feeling, how what sort of stress that they are feeling at that individual moment.
Another example is just like, I know when you walk dogs and then you have the dogs behind the fence, right? And then everyone goes crazy when the dog's like ruff, 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 and then your dogs are like ruff, 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 even though nothing's happening. What's that all about? Like, why do they get so stirred up with each other?
Well, a lot of that has to do with more often than not, when a dog is acting like that, usually they are alone in the backyard, where they don't really have this human intervention, human involvement. So what that really is them taking it upon themselves to handle a situation that they don't really understand. So to them, when they see another dog, a strain, or another human walking by, they see, oh, this new thing, I don't understand it, I don't like it.
Dangerous, maybe?
Yeah, exactly. To them, they just don't know. And so they're just going to default to, I'm just going to bark, and then it's this self-fulfilling thing, because to them, they bark, and then this person walks away. And then so that just reinforces this, like, I'm protecting my space, my safe place, and really not much has happened, but to a dog, that's everything. That reinforces that this barking that they did helped keep them safe, helped protect their place.
Well, a funny story, what could have turned out not funny. We were walking down a sidewalk, and there was a dog that jumped on the fence, except it was the gate, and all of a sudden the gate sprung open because it was windy, you know, and it probably unsettled the gate a little bit. And it was a German Shepherd, which, you know, German Shepherds can be kind of aggressive.
It can be intimidating. Yep.
But the funny thing was, the gate opened, we stood there and looked at the dog, and the dog kind of was surprised that the gate was open, and then my partner ran to the gate and shut the dog in the gate. So it all turned out okay, but it was kind of funny how we were all just like, wow, there's not that barrier there.
Right, and the dog, he was just all talk. He wasn't prepared to do anything about it, but he by the time that barrier was removed, he was just like, oh no.
Now what? I'm used to protecting with this big barrier in front of me.
I think that's so common too, where you have the louder dog, the one that tries to look the most menacing, is really probably not menacing.
Yeah, the dog actually didn't. The dog wasn't scary, but then I was like, no. Another time we were walking by, and there was a fence, and an Akita climbed over the fence, and the one dog is a little more aggressive, so I kept the smaller of the two, and then they could sniff each other, and the dog turned out okay, but you never know, right?
Yeah, and it's hard. That's definitely something where it's the subtle behaviors are the ones that you have to watch out for the most, which is a very, I mean, even 4 years into this is something I still study very much so, for those nonverbal behaviors, to try and, essentially figuring out whether that dog is friend or foe can be very difficult. And a lot of it ends up being the posturing. It's when they're silent and head forward, and then just really stiff ears up. And a lot of times the dogs that do mean harm will wag their tail, which is something that's one of the very common misconception that people attribute. I mean,
that's
context always matters in a situation like that, but if they have a very tense body posture and a very high tail where it's just really, really quick back and forth, that could potentially mean they do intend harm. Where if you have a very loose, relaxed body language where the dog is wiggling back and forth, usually that would be a happy wag.
Yeah. Well, and I think the hard thing is if a lot of times a dog will be off a leash, which I've encountered that before, and they might come running up to you, and the last thing you want to do is like start running away. They'll probably chase you.
Flight is the worst thing you can do in that situation.
So what do you do in a situation? Like my situation, I just tried to be calm, let the dogs sniff each other, and then just kind of walk away. And then the owner came out. Obviously, they didn't mean for the dog to jump over the fence. So it turned out okay. What would you recommend you do in a situation where an unexpected dog comes into your path?
It is the best thing you can do if you're able, and this all, and it's very situationally dependent, because if a dog is actively charging at you, like you said, you don't want to run, because the second that prey drive initiates, and the dog, I like to call it, they hit their threshold where, they're not making good choices anymore. When that prey drive gets initiated, they might pursue, they might bite, they might chase, but if in your situation, if the dog is just sort of casually walking up, not charging, and looking kind of curious. That's always owner's discretion. But I always tell people, if that dog is coming at you, try, it's hard to resist the urge to run, but if you can sort of stand your ground, remain calm, and sort of tell the dog to go. Very stern, very, very forceful, go. Because it's kind of like what we were talking about with that German Shepherd. 9 times out of 10, they don't want to engage. If they think that this is more trouble than it's worth, they're going to be the ones to retreat.
Right. And I have done that because I've had dogs chase me on bikes too. And I've had to say, hey, you go home.
Yep.
And then they're kind of stop for a minute, and then at least they stop chasing me.
And it's so hard because when that fight or flight instinct gets triggered in yourself, it's so hard to think clearly in those moments.
Yeah, you just want to.
Because I've been charged at by more dogs than I can count, so I'm finally at a point where I can think in my head. But I remember the very first time it happened, I absolutely ran the opposite way.
Right.
And then, of course, that dog chased right after me.
So how did you learn all these techniques?
Lots and lots of studying, and especially during the pandemic, I had nothing to do but read books from some very renowned animal behaviorists. I wish I could remember the current person that I'm reading now, but it's just all about, it's very scientific based, very, very much describing how stress accumulates in dogs and how to sort of avoid that, because when it comes, and I say that a lot, it all comes back to that state of mind that the dog is in. Where are they at a point where they can make good choices? Are they coachable, or are they have their nervous system inactivated to where they just are not making those good choices anymore?
So sometimes it's the environment they're in that makes it impossible for them to calm down and make a better choice.
Exactly. So that's where putting some extra pressure on that dog that they aren't quite ready for, kind of like a child that they're not quite ready for. They're not going to make good choices. They're going to default to a behavior that is maybe not productive and not good.
Well, and I've done things with the dogs, like if I have a kid come in, I just make sure that I'm holding the dog and that the kid can, just kind of walk by, not, not make it a big dramatic thing, but just so I have control over the dog, so the dog isn't going to do anything abrupt. Because the last thing you want is anyone to get hurt.
Oh yeah, and especially when you have a new person coming in, it's just so important to make sure that everyone is calm. Energies, they very much matter. And if everybody is calm, then the dogs, they're such empathetic creatures. They absolutely pick up on that, and they pick up on things you just would never expect a dog to pick up on.
I know that when you get tense because of a situation like, let's say a dog's coming at you, your dog responds.
Oh,
your
yes,
dog can
absolutely.
totally pick that up and starts escalating. So once they're escalating, how do you get them to de-escalate? Because you know how it is, sometimes they can be like, and then all of a sudden, just from 5 to 10 in no time.
Absolutely. And I would say a lot of it all starts in the home, because every dog, they need this comfortable, this safe place to essentially switch off and to decompress, to where they can regulate themselves, because a lot of times some of those issues happen is because the dog is just really uncertain on how to regulate itself. And some things that I advise on are basic obedience is important, because it can get the dog thinking, but having a good place command or having solid crate training work can help lay that baseline of having a calm mind. And once they can get there, once the dog can reliably stay calm in these situations, then you build the distance and duration. You take them outside and you introduce things calmly and slowly so they can process the world in a more productive way.
So even if your dog is older, so my dogs are 10, so miss some of the puppy opportunities, are there things you can still do with old dogs? Can you teach old dogs new tricks, right?
Oh, absolutely. It's never too late to to train, do some really quality foundational training with the dog. But I found that the older dogs, it's a lot easier because they're past that puppy stage where the world is new and exciting, and they can go from 0 to 100 and just like that. Where as an older senior dog, they're generally calmer, more receptive to direction from their handler. They might be less receptive to a brand new person, but it can be a lot easier.
Well, and so it sounds like when they're comfortable in their environment, like for example, my dogs are used to us in the house, each other, and that's kind of their comfortable space. And so when somebody new enters, that's going to bring uncertainty, and I don't know if you'd call it anxiety or what it is.
Yeah, and I mean, a lot of that is, it all comes down to an anxiety portion of it. I mean, their world has been interrupted, what they know and what they trust and where they feel safe, and that's where if you can default back to behaviors that they do know, they are comfortable with, like the place crates or basic obedience, and that can kind of help bridge past that, because once they know they can stay calm with this outside influence, this outside stimuli around, and nothing bad is going to happen, you can kind of expand on that. You can build on that, and that's where they become coachable and trainable, and where you can have a lot more success.
The other thing that I've heard is that every breed isn't for everybody.
So that's so important.
So tell me about that. And then a lot of us, like I have rescue dogs, and so they're a mixture of lots of things.
I do too.
So what would you recommend for people? I mean, some people just want to give a good home to a dog that doesn't have a home, and they don't necessarily know what they're getting. Some people pick up purebreds and are trying to pick a certain breed. How do you decide what's right for you?
Well, I think it is so important to be realistic about your life as a whole. Like, how much time can you devote to physical exercise? Because when it comes to a really happy, healthy, balanced dog, they need to be balanced both mentally and physically. And when it comes to the physical portion of it, having a dachshund or a wiener dog, the physical demands are going to be a whole lot different than having a Belgian Malinois, and so you also have to be considerate of what was that dog bred to do. So when it comes to things like a pug was just strictly bred to be a companion animal. There's nothing else in there other than to just be cute and lovable, so to speak. But when you have like an Australian Shepherd who was bred to herd, they were bred to have just a very specific job, and when they don't get that sort of fulfillment that they need, that's where some of the bad behaviors, like a herding dog, is probably going to bite you, because that's just kind of how they communicate. They use their mouth to direct and steer the herd.
Or nip your heels, and it's just kind of their fun in a way.
But a lot of times too, and that's where it comes about being realistic towards your life, there are a lot of things you can do for some of these certain breeds that have these really just, it's just so down deep. There's just this need. There's either a very intense prey drive, or they need to herd, and there are things you can do to give them a good outlet for that, so to speak. And if you can find a good outlet for some of those breed-specific characteristics, that can really help you out a lot.
Well, one of my dogs is part Border Collie, and I'm sure it's kind of like your Australian Shepherd, just high energy, but what she likes is to play ball and grab toys and have us play little games with her and hide things, and so kind of using her mind. So that's been her outlet.
Oh yes, and that's a very good outlet, especially play and fetch can be a good outlet, because it kind of satisfies that prey instinct to chase, to catch the prey, to because and a lot of it, you don't want to think about it, but that's exactly what it's mimicking, is a hunt, so to speak.
Oh, yeah.
Going after that animal that essentially they're mimicking, killing it.
Well, And then,
but in a productive way.
Well, the bigger dog, I mean, she's a mixture of kind of snow dogs, but she brought in a dead squirrel, which I was amazed she caught a squirrel, because squirrels usually don't get caught. But anyway, she brought this squirrel in, and then she has this soft animal. She doesn't like to play too much, but every once in a while she'll take that and she'll just shake it. And like you said,
and that's exactly
she's trying to kill that animal.
Killing that animal. That's kind of one thing I've learned, because that's exactly what my dogs love to do too. And I try to not have that part of the fulfillment, just because I don't want them to think that it's okay to chase and kill the small animals. But so I would definitely caution people with squeaker toys. But
yeah, that's what they love, though, is the squeaker toys.
It's so fulfilling for them. My favorite outlet, especially for a dog with a high prey drive, is a good, nice game of tug. Because the problem with a tennis ball is it is very difficult to teach a very reliable drop it. Whereas I have a much more successful time teaching it, because the thing about having an outlet for that high prey drive, if you can have a good start to the game, a good stop to the game, all controlled by the handler, dogs are very good at picking up on that, and they're less likely to have that sort of behavior manifest outside of the game. You know.
I see. So by having that, then they might take it into the real world. So you want to be conscious of what it is you're having them do. Exactly,
yeah, because essentially that having a good outlet for that prey drive is essentially that hunting and kill drive of them. But if you have a really strong structure around it, they're very good about that. They very much understand that this game is coming from their handler, and that can essentially help with a lot of resource guarding behavior too, if they know that these games have a clear start and stop controlled by the handler.
Right. Well, so let's talk about, how do people get a hold of you if they're interested in having you help with their dogs?
Yeah, and I am always available by phone and by my website, barksandrecmt.com. Should I give my phone number on here?
Sure, yeah, you can.
It's 406-538-9312. And I always try and make sure that I am available for anyone who even just has questions. I mean, so a lot of times people don't even know where to start, because I mean, even in this interview I've covered so much about.
And these are just my random experiences, right?
It's so
and
much
everybody
to
has
it. And
their own.
It's so overwhelming to even know where to begin. And I pride myself on being very good about figuring out where to start, because there is no one size fits all with dog training.
Well, and even a situation like mine, my dogs are not like crazy out of control, but they have some behavioral things that maybe we could, help adjust.
Yeah, some dogs, they need to start from the beginning, and some they just have very mild things that they could need help working on. Every dog is going to be different, have their own needs, breed characteristics.
But I'm sure part of it is coaching the owners.
Yeah, it's one thing I've learned as a trainer. I consider myself to be good at what I do but there's very little dog training involved.
Oh,
it's all training the owners.
Yeah, totally understand. Well, it sure has been a pleasure having you as my guest today. I love dogs. I can tell you love dogs as well, and it's sure fun to talk about our favorite furry animals.
Absolutely. Yep.
Well, thank you so much, and everybody, thank you for joining us on All About Billings, and we hope to see you next time.